the ones you trust the most. Be the ones talking to the police. You learn real fast in the streets. It's not always your enemies you gotta watch. Sometimes, the people sitting closest to you, eating with you, riding with you, calling you brother, be the same ones sitting across from federal agents, telling them everything they know. And that's a different kind of betrayal. Because when danger comes from the outside, you prepare for it. You expect rivals to hate you. You expect police to investigate you. You expect jealous people to watch your moves. But what nobody prepares you for is when the people you trusted the most start helping build the case against you. See, during the height of the crack epidemic in America, the streets became one giant pressure cooker. The money was unbelievable. Entire neighborhoods changed overnight. Young men who came from nothing suddenly had foreign cars, jewelry, houses, influence. But with that money came paranoia, because the federal government wasn't playing games anymore. By the late 1980s and early 90s, the feds had created task forces all across America targeting drug organizations. They started using conspiracy laws, wiretaps, informants, surveillance, and long mandatory sentences to make people cooperate. And once people got scared enough, loyalty started collapsing. That's when you realize everybody ain't built for pressure. I learned that lesson personally. One of the biggest betrayals I ever experienced came from somebody I trusted enough to put in charge of other crew members. Think about that. This wasn't some random dude from the neighborhood. This was somebody around me every day, somebody who knew operations, knew faces, knew movements, knew money routes. I trusted him enough to help oversee people around me. And in the end, he turned me into the feds. Not because we were enemies, not because of some shootout, not because of some war in the streets. Pressure. That's what broke him. See, his girlfriend had gotten caught cashing stolen checks. And once they grabbed her, the domino effect started. She gave him up. Then they leaned on him. And once the federal agents start painting pictures of football number sentences, a lot of people stop thinking about loyalty. Now they're thinking about survival. That's how the streets really worked back then. One arrest could unravel an entire organization, and the feds understood psychology better than most people in the streets did. Every single time one of my crew members went to jail, the federal agents would immediately go down there to talk to them. Every time, they'd sit them in interrogation rooms for hours, show them paperwork, show them photographs, show them statements. Some of those agents were master manipulators. They knew exactly what to say. Everybody else already talking. He about to leave you holding the bag. You facing life. You'll never see your family again. And after enough fear gets poured into a man's mind, he starts looking for a lifeboat. That's why the streets became dangerous in ways people on the outside could never fully understand. You wasn't just worried about police raids. You had to worry about conversations happening behind closed doors. You had to wonder who was secretly cooperating. You had to wonder who was wearing a wire. You had to wonder who folded the moment they got separated from the crew. That kind of paranoia changes you. I already knew people were talking. I didn't know exactly who at first, but I knew. The walls were closing in too specifically. Too many things were being mentioned in investigations that only insiders could know, so I started moving different. I kept where I lived a top secret. Very few people knew where I actually stayed. I started taking alternative routes home constantly. Never driving the same way twice, watching mirrors, switching vehicles, doubling back through neighborhoods. Because once you suspect people are cooperating, you stop relaxing. You stop sleeping peacefully. The game becomes mental warfare. And what made it worse was that suspicion started reaching everywhere. Even my plug down in Florida. A guy known as the Big One was suspected of talking to agents about me. And this was somebody co-signing me. That's how crazy those times became. The federal government had become so aggressive during the crack era that entire networks started collapsing under fear indictments, and informants. People who once stood tall together started saving themselves. And the truth is, most street organizations didn't really fall because of enemies from the outside. They fell from the inside through pressure, fear, betrayal, loose conversations, and cooperation. That's the part movies rarely capture correctly. The streets weren't just violent. They were psychologically exhausting. You couldn't fully trust nobody, not even people smiling in your face. And the deeper you climbed, the fewer people you could honestly depend on. That's why, when I speak about that era, I don't glorify it. I survived it. There's a difference. A lot of people from those days never got the opportunity to tell their side of the story. Some got killed, some disappeared into prison forever, some lost their minds from the pressure, but I lived long enough to reflect on what really happened behind the headlines. And that's exactly why I wrote Everybody Wants Some. Not to make the streets look attractive, but to expose what that life actually cost. The betrayal, the paranoia, the survival, the truth behind the power. Because the most dangerous part of that era wasn't always the police outside the door. Sometimes it was the person sitting right next to you,